And we are now recording.
Okay, so for our project, we did the natural order hypothesis. And a little bit of background information about this hypothesis. The definition is the idea that children learning their first language acquire grammatical structures in a predetermined natural order. It was founded by Stephen Krashen and Tracy Terrell. Some are structures acquired earlier than others. This accounts for second language acquisition. Learners typically acquire the morpheme ing before the third person morphemes of s, independent of learners' age, language one background, and conditions of exposure. And then this picture here displays the natural order hypothesis in a classroom where the student in the first little picture says, "I drawed this picture for you, teacher." And the teacher said, "Drew." The student responds, "Huh?" And then the teacher says, "You drew this picture for me." The student says, "I know that. I'm the one who drawed it." And then the last bubble, it says they will eventually get it. This is an example of how a student who doesn't know the natural order hypothesis yet, but will eventually get it.
All right, this slide's about Stephen D. Krashen. He was one of the founders of the natural order hypothesis. He graduated from the University of California in Los Angeles with a PhD in linguistics, and he specializes in theories of language acquisition. He taught for many years at the University of Southern California. Stephen has published over 350 books and papers and has delivered lectures in all over the United States and Canada. He is an educational researcher and activist, spending time in the Peace Corps. He actually taught English in Ethiopia for 2 years. He is fluent in English, French, German, and Spanish, and he knows a little bit of Chinese. He actually was originally a music major in college, and when he was studying abroad in Austria, he started learning German, and that's how he discovered his passion for linguistics. In recent years, he's focused the role of reading in language acquisition. And one of the things he feels is that you can, like a person can get the general sense of a passage they're reading, even if they don't know all the words. So if you were reading a couple sentences and there were like words blacked out or missing, you would still get the overall idea of what the passage is saying. And then just a couple of fun facts about Stephen D. Krashen. He has a black belt in Taekwondo, and in 1978, he won the Venice Beach Open Incline Press. So,
Did not know that. All right then.
Tracy D. Terrell also co-authored the book The Natural Approach with Dr. Krashen. Unfortunately, she passed away in 1991. Terrell graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with a PhD in linguistics. She taught at the University of California, Irvine, and with, as I mentioned, she co-wrote The Natural Approach with Stephen Krashen. She also spoke many languages with fluency in Dutch, English, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish. And she was remembered for her work as a theoretical linguist, especially with her work in Hispanic linguistics. And she, one of her ideas about the natural approach is that it's designed to reduce learners' anxieties and expose them more to language. So instead of like, trying to force students to learn a certain amount of, grammar or words at a time, it's just, you let the kind of student pace, and eventually she understands through the natural approach and the natural hypothesis or natural order hypothesis. Sorry about that. Go to the next slide.
All right.
Thank you. So here's just some of the main takeaways of the natural order hypothesis. The hypothesis states that learners require the grammar skills of a language in a fixed order. So you're not going to learn like verb tenses and stuff like that before you take on the more basic structures of a language. So this means the sequence of language acquisition follows a natural order in which specific grammar skills must be learned before other skills can be developed. Learners cannot be expected to exhibit late level or complex grammatical skills during the early stages of language acquisition. So that's where like you like kind of thinking like through the wider levels, like you wouldn't expect like a level 1 or a level 2 to be able to do the same type of things that a level 5 wider level learner would be able to do. So another main takeaway from the hypothesis is that student error is a natural part of the process, and there's an emphasis on error correction, which can damage a learner's confidence and hinder their language acquisition. So instead of like when a student does make an error, it's not like focus is a bad thing. Like it's the teacher acknowledges it, but it's not something that's going to like hold them up. And then learners likely will not acquire items or skills until they're ready to do so. So if you are like a teacher and you're trying to like get one of your students to take away something about a new language, like you can't force it. It's not going to happen any faster than until the student's ready. You can go to the next slide. So here's just some like takeaways from how you can implement the natural order hypothesis into your teaching. Patience is key to being a natural order teacher. Since the natural order sequence is fixed, teachers cannot hasten the process or change it. That's probably the most frustrating part, keeping the natural hypothesis order in mind. You're just going to have students that aren't going to learn certain parts of a language as quickly as others, and that's part of the process. Teachers must know where each of their students are in the process of a second language acquisition, and that just goes back to, knowing each student's an individual, and they're at an individual, at individual points in their journey to learning a new language. So, just kind of referring back to the wider levels, you can't expect like an emerging or entering student to, be able to write fluently or speak fluently in their second language, and then knowing that each. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay.
And then for the critiques of this hypothesis is that some believe that there's no natural order since languages exist where there's no natural order to follow, which also means that the order of acquisition is wrong. And therefore people believe the natural order should not be a part of second language acquisition, where also not every language will follow that order or any order at all. And then addressing the critiques, even if it doesn't work for all languages, it still works for most. Therefore, there should be no implications to students for teaching in a natural order, because if they don't follow one, then it doesn't matter. And also, learning a second language should follow the same order as learning your first language did, where it is your natural time frame, so it is more effective and timely.
Now we're going to talk about some applications. These are only a handful. There's a lot of applications for this theory. Some of them are, like Dylan already mentioned, limiting error corrections when you are working with a student who is still learning, because you can destroy their confidence, and allowing them to recognize them and correcting them on their own is extremely important. Having a variety of input. So keeping the natural order acquisition in mind, don't attempt to expect them to mimic your syllables exactly. Having a high focus on frequent vocabulary, using more common words is extremely useful. As they progress, you can include more words. Providing opportunities to progress at their own pace, like Shauna just mentioned, and keeping the input interesting and comprehensible. So making it something interesting for your students. And these are our questions. So our questions are, what are some of the takeaways of natural order hypothesis? How can they be implemented? What are the differences? What are some things that differentiate between a regular teacher and a natural order teacher? Do you think you could be a natural order teacher? Why or why not? And what are the critiques of the theory? Do you agree? Why or why not? Do you want me to play the activity?
No, you don't have to. For this activity, there's going to be a question and answer handout that goes along with the video that you guys are going to watch. And the video will be linked on the handout, and the handout will be linked in Play-Doh. But it basically just goes over everything we talked about, but in a more understanding way, where the questions will help you understand this hypothesis a little more than we explained it.
Oh, now it wants to start playing. That's not what we wanted. And these are our references.